The slap echoed through the open parking lot like a gunshot, sharp and cruel, louder than the wind that rattled the golden autumn leaves across cracked asphalt. The girl's head snapped to the side, not from impact alone but from the shock of realization that she had just been publicly humiliated by the man who once promised to never abandon her. A few strangers paused, stared, then looked away, as if pain were contagious. Across from the faded blue pickup truck, the single father froze, coffee trembling in his hand, his heart yanking violently inside his chest as he witnessed the moment that would change everything. If you are watching Ripple of Love and believe in hope, compassion, and second chances, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because stories like this live and breathe through hearts like yours. His name was Caleb Mercer, a man worn down by years of quiet battles. At 38, his hands were rough from construction work and his soul was rougher still from loss. 2 years earlier, he had buried his wife under gray skies and fake condolences, then drove home to a house that felt too big and too empty, except for the small anchor that kept him alive, his 7-year-old daughter, Nora. Life became a routine of survival, dropping her at school, working until his body screamed, and falling asleep on the couch with the television flickering over memories he tried not to touch. He didn't talk to people much. Didn't laugh much. Didn't imagine much. The girl standing trembling near the truck was Mila Harrow, 23 years old, a cashier at the grocery store across the street. Her life had been a slow, silent drowning. Orphaned by a drunk driving crash at 16, she bounced between relatives who saw her as a burden rather than family. She worked 2 jobs, lived in a dim, crumbling studio apartment, and smiled at strangers so often that it had become muscle memory. The man who had just slapped her, her fiancé, the man she believed might pull her out of loneliness, had been using her. His friends watched from a distance as he spat cruel words and stormed off, leaving her standing in the open, clutching her phone like it was the only thing tethering her to the earth. Caleb should have looked away. It would have been easier. Life had taught him that pain was everywhere and that most of the time, all you could do was survive your own. But something inside him snapped awake, something he thought had died along with his wife, the instinct to protect, to step toward hurt rather than away from it. He leaned against the hood of his blue pickup, the engine ticking softly in the cooling air, and met Mila's eyes as she tried to swallow her tears and pretend she was fine. For a long moment, nothing happened. Just wind, distant traffic, the smell of coffee and dust and fallen leaves. Then Mila walked toward him, each step fragile, as if the ground might give up beneath her. She didn't cry loudly. She didn't scream. Her voice came out tiny, almost embarrassed by her own desperation. "Can you pretend to be my boyfriend, just for a day?" The words landed in Caleb's life like a stone dropped in still water. He saw a dozen reasons to say no. He had a daughter waiting at home. He had walls built high and strong. He had no energy for complications. But he also saw the faint trembling in Mila's hands, the way her shoulders curled inward as if trying to disappear, and the flash of something painfully familiar in her eyes, absolute, crushing loneliness. What he said next surprised even himself. He said yes. The first test came faster than either of them expected. Mila needed to go to a small daytime engagement brunch where her ex would be, along with friends who already believed she was worthless for being too needy and too soft. They drove there in silence, the old truck rattling slightly, sunlight streaking through the windshield. Caleb felt stiff, unsure where to place his hands, how close was too close, how much kindness might overwhelm her. Inside the bright cafe, every surface gleamed with polished wood and glass. Laughter dripped from the ceiling like honey. Eyes turned toward them as they walked in. Caleb felt the tension crawl up his spine as whispers followed her. Mila's heartbeat sounded loud in her own ears. She had asked for a pretend boyfriend, but now it felt terrifyingly real. Caleb's hand found hers. Not dramatic. Not forced. Just warm, steady, human. Something in Mila cracked open. Not weakness, relief. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was walking alone into a storm. She felt shielded. As the hours passed, something unexpected grew between them. Not romance. Not yet. But safety. Trust. Caleb caught himself smiling at the way Mila tried to act confident but still tucked her hair behind her ear when she got nervous. Mila noticed the way Caleb constantly checked his phone, not for work, but to make sure Nora had been picked up safely from school by the neighbor. He wasn't pretending to be a good man. He was one. But life tested him when he least expected it. Just outside the cafe, as they headed back to the truck, a call came. Nora had fallen on the playground. Not badly injured, but scared, crying, asking for her dad. Panic exploded through Caleb's chest, a familiar sharp terror that had lived there since his wife died. Old fear rushed in. I can't be everywhere. I can't fix everything. I'm failing. He almost turned the key and drove away without a word. Then he saw Mila watching him. She didn't say anything, but her eyes softened, understanding something deeper than words. She knew what it meant to be left alone when you needed someone most. At that moment, Caleb broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But quietly, in the way men break when they have held too much for too long. He confessed his exhaustion through silence, through the way his shoulders dropped. He was tired of being strong. Tired of pretending he wasn't scared every single day. Mila didn't touch him. She just stayed. And somehow, that was enough. They went to pick up Nora together. Sunlight filtered through the trees at the schoolyard, painting everything gold. Nora's scraped knees were small wounds compared to the giant relief in her eyes when she saw her father running toward her. Caleb lifted her into his arms, breathing in the warm familiar scent of shampoo and childhood. Mila stood a few steps back, watching. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a burden. She felt like she was part of something real. They spent the rest of the day walking through a small park, fallen leaves crunching under their feet. Nora held Mila's hand without hesitation, her small fingers wrapping around her in pure, innocent trust. The air smelled like earth and fading summer. The sky stretched wide and soft above them. And something shifted. Not fireworks. Not fantasy. Simply two broken people discovering that broken things can rest beside each other without shattering further. As the sun leaned toward the horizon, painting the clouds in slow shades of fire and gold, Mila realized she had forgotten to feel ashamed. And Caleb realized he had forgotten to feel alone. If this story has touched your heart, take a moment right now to support it, because stories only live when they find a home inside someone's soul. Before the final moments of this story, I want you to pause and comment one word that describes how this journey made you feel. The last light of day wrapped around them as they stood near the old blue pickup again. The parking lot looked different now, no longer the place of humiliation and violence, but a quiet beginning. Caleb looked at Mila and understood something with terrifying clarity. He had agreed to pretend, but nothing in him felt like this was a lie anymore. And Mila understood that sometimes the world doesn't save you with grand gestures, but with small hands holding yours when you're about to fall. There was no dramatic confession. No perfect resolution. Only the quiet certainty that tomorrow would be different. Not perfect, but gentler. Mila went home to her tiny apartment that night and didn't feel like the walls were closing in. Caleb tucked Nora into bed and smiled when she asked if the nice lady would visit the park again someday. And somewhere between those small, ordinary moments, two hearts began to heal in ways neither of them had believed possible. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and support it so more people can feel this warmth and hope. And as night fell softly over the quiet town, the world didn't change all at once. But two lonely lives did. And sometimes, that is enough to start a miracle. Because love doesn't always come as a promise. Sometimes, it comes as a simple yes when someone is brave enough to ask.